we're going to be talking about reparations. Why should you support it? This is a deep subject, and so we're going to be having Jamin Mason and Khalif Mitchell. Jamin Mason is a reparationist and activist and advocate with the Negro Collective. Thank you so much for joining.
Thank you so much, sharing your platform for this mandatory and essential meeting of the minds to make this happen for people that have been oppressed since day one.
We also have Khalif Mitchell joining as well. Why is reparations needed and necessary?
It is necessary because it was a debt owed. It has been a debt owed for far too long. In our ancestors' name and in their awesome presence that's still here, we have to press forward with calling attention to this debt that the American government owes.
And Khalif?
When we're talking about reparations, and it was described in the 40 Acres and a Mule, that document itself is called Special Field Orders 15. We also had things that after the war were set up to establish us as new American, to be able to make our foundation from slave to American more sound. And it was also something that the government recognized as something that was bestowing upon the American Negro. The American Negroes are deserving from everything from that point when we were made American to everything up to now that may have been sequential from not having those things that would have been given.
How would you respond to people who say that the reparations should be paid to the actual people who are slaves, not their descendants?
If someone stole a motorcycle and the person that stole the motorcycle died, but the person came forward and asked for their property back, whether they come, his son comes or not, that is still something that they would receive, because that was something that was stolen and it was property that was falsely taken from them. So that debt still has to be paid, and especially because that disparity is so clear and present to this day as to why and what happened because of those spoils of war being taken from us.
Khalif, how would you respond?
Well, that's a great point. When you're talking about the law, and it's called the right of the heir. I'm owed whatever my father was owed, and he's owed whatever his father was owed. And it goes back into time, into perpetuity, because I am, in the eyes of the law, the representation of my father. So because I am their representative as their literal heir to their lineage, I'm owed the thing that they would have been owed of public space. In the eyes of the law, the heir is the same as the ancestor, and that is the maxim of the law. So in the eyes of the law, I am my ancestor. So therefore, I am owed what they would have gotten.
And one of the things that I just wanted to share, it talks about redress and reparations for Japanese American incarceration. And this was actually signed in 1988 by Ronald Reagan. Payment for the internment of Japanese Americans.
Absolutely. And the thing about it is this too. Whenever we see compensation, that every other group is always given a monetary value in a dollar form. This is something that is always looked at as skewed with our community, especially when the American Negro demands cash reparation. It seems to be this conversation that gets muddied around saying, well, you know what, let's have programs, when all these other groups always have a denotation and a dollar value. So this notion that we can't say that we're value should not be done in a monetary form, which actually brings a devaluation, which is a cause of more injury.
Actually, I would piggyback off of what you just said, and just like when Kamala Harris, for black people, why would I do something specifically for black people? Maybe because they built this country with free slave labor and weren't paid for it. I would just add on to that and just point it out and say that the time is now, has been forever, to make this right. By doing this, you're healing the bottom of the foot, the people that have always been oppressed. Once you do that, once we heal this, once white supremacy, let's keep it 100 right here. Once white supremacy gets that silver bullet, that is the only way that we're going to be able to move forward. And once that happens, this world will get better. Abraham Lincoln was killed. Special Field Orders 15 was taken away. We got to be specific and call that what it is, that had infrastructures, that had protections for our people. They wouldn't be murdering us like they were. And they really have to look at Special Field Orders 15. And that's why the Negro Collective, that's why we press that so hard. We want that. The repair can't come any other way but through that field order, period. It's not repair unless there's cash payments to alleviate the stress and the harm that our people have went through. People with disgusting minds, people that just thought we were really truly nothing and profited off of us, off of our bodies. Being the first form of capital in America was us. And it's just like, for people to see that here in America to the Black American Negro, and really has to be called out and put on a full press mandatory mission.
Both expressed desire and support for cash reparations. Do you think it should be cash only, or do you think it should be a mix of cash and a resource-based reparations?
See, we can't have the cash without the framework. A lot of us didn't go to financial schools. That we need to have a framework of cash, very important, but understanding how to have that paid out so there's not a harsh economic toll.
That I'm going to be sharing right now the website that this talks about, American Union Reparations, the American Negro Resolution. First part, it says, knowledge is power. America would not be the country it is without the slave labor provided by Negro bodies. This website was created to make this knowledge accessible for all and to be a template for fellow states to file resolutions supporting the U.S. government, making our people whole. When we know better, we must do better. Should we also be looking for reparations from England as well?
Hell yes, without a doubt. That needs to be a part of that. We should go for America first. That needs to the white supremacy. The supremacy realm needs to be alleviated completely.
So I wanted to go into this, the economic impact of slavery, because I also have a question that's kind of tied to this as well. One of my biggest questions is, when it comes to looking for reparations, does this also include a lot of the corporations that are still in existence today that have benefited from chattel slavery?
Yes. To start knocking on their doors, because J.P. Morgan, they were the one insuring the slave boats. And, people on that level, they are still in action today. So, yeah, if we start tort claims or some kind of claim, start pressing on them, they're going to say, hey, government, get these people off of our back. So, yes, I definitely believe that is one in a multifaceted approach, which I think we need to take them all and shoot any direction we can. Yes, that is one of the directions I believe we should go.
True.
Yeah, I second that.
You both were talking about Special Field Orders number 15, whereas after the U.S. Civil War on January 12, 1865, General William
Tecumseh
and Secretary of War Edwin M. Stanton met with a group of Negro community leaders consisting of Negro Baptist and Methodist ministers from Savannah, Georgia, and they were asked, what do you want for your own people? They replied, the way we can best take care of ourselves is to have land. Whereas on January 16, 1865, Special Field Order number 15 was a military order issued during the American Civil War by General William T. Sherman. Special Field Orders number 15 was fully enforceable by wartime law. It says the sea, islands, and 330 miles of coastline from Charleston, South Carolina, to the St. Johns River in Florida, 30 miles back from the sea, will be given as spoils of war to the Negro families so that the injustices of slavery might be addressed and reparations could be made. It's basically like a legal document.
I think page 3 is the actual field order. So that's involved in that website as well. We've done a lot of the legwork. All you have to do is figure out the harms specifically to your state, put them in there, add them to it, and put it into your local senator, or make some noise and put it out there. That was the intent. Take the hard part away and give everybody the nuts and bolts to how we can fix this American problem.
One of the main things that's very important is the part that you were mentioning when you were saying about how This is a war document. When
Hmm.
you're under war, the way things work as far as the government is very different, right? When you're in war, the Constitution is suspended, and therefore it becomes subject of the war. Meaning, the president has the ability to now not be president, but he's actually five-star general commander in chief. He's in charge of all the armed forces. He's in charge of every single avenue of anything dealing with the territories that America would encompass under his federal jurisdiction. So this is why, if you look up the war powers, you'll see that Abraham Lincoln was like a Caesar. Whatever he was to say was to become law, because the fact that we were fighting an enemy that was domestic. We weren't fighting an international enemy under international law. We were fighting domestic enemies under the form of a rebellious group of people called the Confederates, who went against the Union to go ahead and therefore has formed armed rebellion and armed insurrection again to overtake and overthrow the Constitution.
There's something that I saw was that there were a number of people who are within our government that are also descendants of slave owners or enslavers. Would you say that reparations is owed from them, from their families as well?
And this is why I think leaving it where Special Field Orders 15 is the foundation makes it where it's inarguable, right? If I
Hmm.
was to go after each and every one's family, then the argument can be made that that was a private contract or private property, and therefore they're not brought into the jurisdiction of the federal government to be owed anything. This is me playing devil's advocate, right? I
Hmm.
could then make the argument to say that there's no statute of there's the statute of limitations or the statutes of power does not grant the federal government tell me what to do with my property. So this is why you need things like President Proclamation Order Number 95, commonly known as Emancipation Proclamation. You need these documents to say that there's a legal standing for this property to now be shifted into non-property status. You can't just
Hmm.
take a person's property without giving what you have to give equal or greater compensation or fulfillment of contract, which is why the conversation about going after families is kind of something where we're talking about is not really what we're not in the framework of that. We're owed from the federal government, so we're not trying to go to the president who might be a ex-slave owner or the congressman, because at the end of the day, the only thing we really can hold over them is to say that they may be skewed or biased in their decision making as descendants of of those who enslaved us, meaning they might not support reparations. They might not be for our advantageous help because they were from a generation of people who probably were against us being free and against us having economic opportunities. So we wouldn't really be advantageous going after families as much as it would be going after the federal government documents that they promised to us as a people and not just to each individual as a family.
Also, I want to share this as well. Post abolition inequalities. This isn't just limited to chattel slavery, but it's also post, you go to the Reconstruction, Jim Crow era. And so this says, whereas following the abolition of slavery, the American government at the federal level continued to perpetuate, condone, and often profit from practices that continue to disadvantage Negroes. These practices included sharecropping, convict leasing, black codes, Jim Crow laws, organized riots, unequal education, unequal access to power, mass incarceration, and unequal access to global civic programs and agendas. Civic organizations were able to operate while openly discriminating against Negroes and still have a non-tax exempt status and disproportionate treatment at the hands of the criminal justice system. This is whereas the median wealth of the white household is 2 times that of Negroes and their descendants. This form divide and conquer has been strategically implemented by dominant groups to keep this oppressive power structure running exactly how it's designed to run, to reassure that those in power today will stay in power tomorrow. Whereas restitution for Negroes and their descendants in the United States is estimated at least 15 trillion in cash payments, endowments, and annuities, trust accounts, or other investments that will improve the well-being of the Negroes and their descendants who were harmed. So you're also tackling the inequality that has also been happening post chattel slavery. So when it comes to the amount that is calculated, because if I remember correctly, Dr. Sandy Darity, in his book From Here to Equality, I think he estimated about 11 trillion. I think was it that? If you guys don't mind correcting me.
One thing I know Dr. Darity says is that's just the base. Like that's
That's
the
the
lowest
base, like the
estimate. That's
baseline
like the low. I think he said it's
Yeah, minimum.
23 trillion. If anything,
minimum.
I think he said more recently 23 trillion. But he also
23.
always throws the caveat and says that that's the bare minimum. That's the base. Newsweek had it at 151 million a piece. Send it. That's the value that their economists did, and they actually made that publication, I believe, in 2022. I'll try to put that in the chat so you can see that as well.
If I could jump in real quick, California just proved that a state cannot do this. I don't care how big your economy in that state is, California, all that stuff. It don't matter. This is not something that a state can pay. This is a federal harm that can only be repaired by a federal action. I really wanted to make that clear. All these state reparation task force and all, that's a grift. That is literally people wanting to make money. Anyone that stands against lineage-based for special field orders, they're standing against true repair. There is no kind of half-stepping when it comes to that. It's either you are seeing the truth in this or you're not. And that's kind of the scary part about it, because the reality is coming. This document alone is straight proof of harms literally that are government sanctioned and that they're trying to wash over today. Like I said, they tried to take the word Negro out of the lexicon for a reason. They are trying to erase our people, just like what's happening right now in Chicago. Mark Carter is out there doing amazing work in Chicago, pushing back on the immigration situation that's happening and just kind of trampling over our people in already bad situations, and then adding more people to vote. That's erasing us even more. That's putting the lower class below the lower class. So how do you do that and then expect us not to see the reality in you erasing our people right before our eyes? So that's another harm that is happening post all of this stuff that's happened before, but now they're making us, they're trying to make, because we see the play and we see what they're doing. We're seeing that they're, bringing people here. And I'm not saying I'm against oppression anywhere. I don't care who it is or what it's about. If we're American first, and we need to focus on American issues without giving all these other debts that have been owed need to be paid, definitely, before we're just handing out money and giving checks to anyone that comes here. But we need to draw attention to all of these harms and push forward with the truth, which we're trying to stand in.
So, I mean, this actually kind of goes in line with some of the arguments that I've made as to why we should not be funding the war in Ukraine, or by giving over $3 billion a year to Israel, because really you could have paid reparations to those of us who are considered American Negroes, or some people say American freedmen. Unfortunately, a huge number of Nazi elements in Ukraine, which we're giving money to, which sounds really out of whack when you think about it. Like, well, that money really could be going towards us here at home, especially to the people who you owe, but instead you're paying it towards Raytheon and Honeywell and Northrop Grumman. Your thoughts on that as well?
Yeah, a lot of that money that they're giving all of these other nations, we look at that and say that's how reparation. We look at it and take very great offense to it, especially when you're talking about a lot of these things that we're doing are done at these are options. These are not things which incorporate our national security. These are not things that incorporate our national economic investment plans. These are things that are done to devalue the conversation of reparations, and we believe it's actually more nefarious and it's trying to devalue the actual monetary value of the reparations that will come to us. So if the dollar is as strong as it is today, can you imagine the dollar from the day they actually cut the checks, as it would have been the dollar in 1985 when I was born, the dollar in 1920 when you could get a pure cane sugar soda, a all beef Nathan's hot dog, and a bag of chips for like 35 cents. The value of a dollar over the course of time should be growing in its economic strength. But due to these fraudulent investments by what we call enemies of the state, we believe our government has been taken over by the Confederates ever since Abraham Lincoln was assassinated. Confederates had worked their way up so much so that the Dixiecrats, who was the party of our enslavers, has us now as a party so vile that we're loyal to voting Democrat without wondering if these people policies are actually good for us. We've become a tool for our own destruction more than a tool for our economic and own benefit. So when we see these things happen and politically that we see it done at the behest of government infrastructures, we look at this like these people are not American first minded. These people aren't thinking about getting America's sins clean. They're not thinking about cleaning America's roads, America's railways, which are absolutely in almost dilapidated condition. We literally have just different type of things with homelessness, with our economic investment in America. We make a lot of money for our country, and to not see the reciprocal value of that effort in our country is actually criminal. So to see these dollars going outside of our country, even when Americans are saying that we're wanting our reparations that is owed to us, it's something that it's borderline treasonous. Because if you look at what America is supposed to be for Americans, what we see today is not that. Even reparations, it's an American plan. The American Negro's dollar does not go outside of America. We're not sending our money when we get it across the borders. We're not looking for the first Western Union to take our money and send it out to the Caribbean, Africa, Europe, Asia. Our money goes from North Carolina to South Carolina, from Virginia to New Jersey, from LA to San Diego, from Texas up to North Dakota. We're not sending our money out of the country. So our money has an ability to actually build up the economic structure, the economic investment of America, because nobody spends money faster than the Negro people anyway. They say that the dollar is in our community leaves what I think, Brother James, and they say a mere 13 minutes or 13 hours, the dollar is out of our community. Well, can you imagine when we get reparations, how much more economic investment we'll make in our community?
So I want to also ask this question because a lot of people think that reparations is based on just race. If you're Black in the United States, you will be owed reparations. Can you explain why that wouldn't be the case?
Yeah, reparations is a lineage-based conversation. The only people who are owed reparations is not every Black-looking person. It's only those whose ancestors would have been valid on that American Negro Special Field Orders 15. Because everybody whose ancestor or who's a descendant of the American Negro atrocity, American chattel slavery, know what 40 acres and a mule is. And we understand that that's what we're owed. So not every Black person in America is owed that. But this also goes to show how dynamic our conversations can be, right? Because you may have a brother like my wonderful American Negro Jamin Mason, who's a mulatto, who has an American Negro dad and a non-American Negro mom. So you have that mix of a white American, Black American Negro who literally who will be owed reparations. You may have somebody who's a quarter Negro. They'll be owed reparations. So we'll have this conversation, but it will be for those who literally on their paperwork have lineage of those who have paperwork from American chattel slavery. It will not just be based on you have Black skin and you've been a slave somewhere, so you get money from America. That's not how it actually goes. It is a lineage-based conversation, and I think anything outside of that is not specific. So it is for the American Negro descendants, American Negroes from American chattel slavery, and those descendants.
Give a shout out to Grandma real quick. She said, "No, baby, we were not slaves. We didn't do that. You know, we now my grandpa was a sharecropper. He was involved in that coming up in Rome, Georgia. That's where my people come from. We weren't slaves. So does that mean my aunt that grew up and went to the first segregated school, does that mean she's not owed?" And now I would say, hell no, she is owed. But that's a separate claim. That's outside of the claim of what this claim is for. This claim is specifically for the black American Negroes that built this country with slave labor, straight up and down.
Also, one thing about lineage, which makes it amazing as well, is that we can have those descendants who would have been in American chattel slavery, such as those that Harriet Tubman had moved outside of America under the Underground Railroad up to now Nova Scotia. Those people as well would be tied to our reparations claim because they are lineage of our people who literally ran away, and therefore they are still our people, no matter how far or wide they may go. We still had conversations with another sister who was absolutely of our lineage in the UK. She was from the Johnson plantation. She's just the first generation person in the UK. But prior to that, all of her ancestors were here in America. We had a conversation as well with someone else, like Dwayne Wade Johnson. Everybody knows him for being the Rock and this Polynesian guy. Well, his dad is actually a Johnson from the Underground Railroad that Harriet Tubman had traveled from America, brought to Nova Scotia, and his dad and a Polynesian woman came together and created Dwayne Johnson. This is why his name is Johnson. And many of the Johnsons up there in Nova Scotia, which is a big American Negro people community, literally are Johnsons from the Johnson plantation. Dwayne Johnson and the Tate brothers, they're owed reparations. So it's not about whether you're rich, you're poor, you're half Polynesian, half white, quarter Negro. Your ancestors through your bloodline was a part of this atrocity. So when reparations checks get cut, you as a descendant of those ancestors who are owed and would have been owed are therefore the descendant and living vessel of them. So therefore you are owed as well.
We traced my lineage back. And so the wall that we hit was my fifth great grandfather that was born in 1792 in Essex County, Virginia. That because of him being born in 1792, this was before the Civil War. So this would mean that someone like myself would be eligible for lineage-based reparations. But it also means that my nieces and nephews who are also half white that will also be eligible for it as well. Maybe prorated, but but you know, they will also be eligible as well because they are also part of that lineage too.
Because as soon as we start saying you have to be black, now we're discriminatory to those that might not be black, right? Because you might have some of those cousins whose ancestors didn't write that they were black. They might have wrote that they were white, but their lineage is not white, right? Because you have to go. These are constructs, which is why it defies them by not being discriminatory, by passing the strict scrutiny by going under American Negro. Because American Negro is a people in a country. So therefore, we're a people with a nation. So now we can claim reparations. Parts come in, that means that under reparations, we can't disparage like they were. Because then you fall into the discrimination factors, which bring up lawsuits. If you want to keep out of lawsuits, you have to pass the bar of strict scrutiny. And the American Negro passes that bar with flying colors, because you could be a half Negro, quarter Negro, full Negro. Long as your ancestors came from that atrocity, it don't matter what you are today. Long as that bloodline ties from you to there, you're good on your matrilineage of your mom or your patrilineage of your father as well.
Why not use the word freedman instead of Negro? I'm just trying to figure out as to why instead of using Negro, we don't use the word freedman.
Yeah, that's a great question. When you're talking about freedman, so under Black's law, freedman, it says in Roman law, it means one who has been set free from slavery. But in America, it's respecting the Negroes. So even if you say freedman, you're falling into the form of saying in America, it respects the Negroes. So we look at freedmen as a transition from enslaved to free. Then from freedmen, we are the American. So we're not just freedmen. We are actually American. Freedmen was a status to denote that we had came from chattel slave to free. We were no longer enslaved. But now that we're American and slavery is outlawed, there's no need to say I'm a freedman because I'm an American. No American can be held under slavery or bondage except either they be convicted and tried by a jury to become a criminal, and then you can hold them under slavery. You only can be a slave in America legally if you're a criminal. Outside of that, you can't be a slave. Therefore, you ain't a freedman. You either are a certain American that has that lineage from slavery or you're not. So this is why Obama is an African American. Obama is a Black American, but Obama is not a Negro American or American Negro. Even those words that were true from when Senator Harry Reid told him in the halls of Congress. He said, "You're a light-skinned African American who lacks Negro dialect," meaning that you look black, but you ain't a Negro. You don't even talk like that. Because as Negroes, we have our own language. It's called Ebonics. We have our own culture. It's called American Negro culture. As we have our own sports, it's called the Negro Leagues. We have our own songs from slavery. It's not called the Freedmen songs. It's called the Negro spirituals. So in understanding how history we were categorized and cataloged, it's very important to know that I'm a free American Negro now. I'm not a freed man because my ancestors didn't come from slavery from my mama and them. Now my great grandparents were freedmen, but I'm a descendant of freedmen, as Dr. Darity would say, not a freedman alone. See, I would be a descendant of that. Whereas I'm an American Negro enslaved and see, because when I was enslaved, you sold me as a Negro. When I became free, I got my freedom as a Negro. The process upon which enslavement to freedom is called freedman. That status of from slave to free is called freedman. My ancestors were freedmen. I'm a descendant of freedmen, but I am today an American Negro, if that makes sense.
My brother, let me throw a little bit of water on there. Freeman is us. That is all us. Black American, freeman, but that all denotes from Negro. They said every Negro may be a Black American, but not every Black American can be a Negro. That is to say, you can be black skin, melanated in color, but that doesn't make you a Negro. That it's a bloodline. It's an ethnicity.
That court case was called People versus Hall, and I want to say it was 1863 from the California State Supreme Court, where it was said that there's a wide difference between the two. A Negro may be a black person, but not every black person is a Negro. So when we say Negro, in the eyes of the law, it didn't matter whether we were enslaved or free, because as Negroes, we're of that bloodline. This is why when you look up freedmen again in Black's Law Dictionary, when you're talking about freedmen, and it comes from Rome. But in America, it's respecting Negroes, as it's in the definition. So to say that I'm a Negro, it encompasses that already. You're just talking about a specific period from when I was an enslaved Negro to when I became a free Negro. That process and the status of it is called freedman. But today, I am an American Negro. This is why so many people, when you look up freedmen, you see the indigenous people are freedmen. They still have a freedman's, they still identify as those people who were once enslaved by indigenous territories. Those people were called freedmen, and now they're called freedmen back into those indigenous tribes that they come from. You have a lot of people who, under the term and classifications, and this is things that Dr. Darity has spoken on as well, when you incorporate freedmen, it does not speak to specific lineage, which may include non-Negro white people. But when you say Negroes, you're speaking about a lineage of people who specifically came out of slavery, who have paperwork that ties them directly to that slavery, directly to the American Negro atrocities, and all the way to now. We were only changed in 1960. Prior to that, our Universal United Negro College Fund, Negro Bankers, the first NBA was the Negro Bankers Association, the Negro Leagues for our sports, our Negro United National Council of Negro Women, which is still up today as our governing body of women who are in politics or in government that are Negro women. They are still known as Negro organizations today that are actually for Negro people. So it's very important and vital that our name, even the Negro League's history, I think the president said when Joseph Biden, Sleepy Joe, was saying, that great American Negro, great Satchel Paige, the media, who was always trying to erase Negro, was the ones trying to condemn Joe Biden, saying that he used a term that's outdated. But actually, the president and executive director for the Hall of Fame at the Negro Museum said that it would have been no better word for Joe Biden to have used describing Satchel Paige, because that word allows others in the history books to know this ain't just a black man. This is an American Negro man. This ain't just a black athlete. This is a Negro athlete. And I think as a descendant of a Negro, one who is very proud and open and let everyone know that I'm not just a black man, I'm an American Negro man. That is something to that. And it is a power and a pride to that. That's something that I think people wanted us to kind of get away from because it almost was fraternal in its own objections. But the word Negro is not an adjective, it's a noun. And that's very important to understand. And that can be found in the Noah Webster's Dictionary on American English.
I have another question, and I hope I'm not taking too much of your time, but
No, we're here, brother. It's a good Saturday. We're here, man. Negro unity is what the world needs. So I'm glad to be here with you. We're good.
Some people would ask the question, in regards to getting money from the federal government, where is that money going to come from? How are you guys going to get this much money from the federal government?
There are a multitude of ways we could. This marijuana, where is that money going? Where is all those billions of dollars that's been made with that? Why not put that toward the demographic that they harm the most with? Stop the damn wars. Leave people alone, even if it's oppressed and it's horrible. Like, leave that stuff alone if it ain't got nothing to do with you. And why are we bullying and stealing resources and doing that's all we're doing over there. We're extracting from people that are literally killing each other. So how are we really helping? That's kind of where I'm at. But stop the wars, stop endless wars, tax the rich. That's another they're paying less, making all that money. They don't pay anything in taxes. And I'm like, wait, we pay 21%. We pay to eat and live and, in taxes, sales taxes. Why wouldn't they have to put that back in? And there are so many solutions. There are so many ways. What's that going to do? We're going to fix our house. We're going to send our kids to college. We are going to invest back in our country. It's going to stay here and not be up on a mantle in Elon Musk's his closet. Yeah, there are so many ways that I could think of. We could sit here all day and I could think of ways that we could form and pay for reparations. But it's white supremacy relinquishing its grip to and kind of being the guy behind the curtain that no one just goes over and pulls the curtain back and exposes who it is. But those would be some of the solutions and payments, some ways that we could pay for this. But when anyone else needs it, this isn't even a question, and that's the part I don't get.
America's a money sovereign nation. We can print money as well as we want, but I think the main thing that we need to focus on is that's a problem for the person who injured you. Never in history or in injury law is the victim ever supposed to even consider how the tortfeasor is supposed to pay. But as for us as the victims, we should never try to put in our minds how that the victimizer is going to pay us. It is never in our headspace and our spiritual space or in our mental space to take up any time to worry about, consider, or think about any ramifications of what us getting our injuries healed should do to the nation, should do to the government, because under no circumstance is the person who stole my house, stole my car, stole my bank accounts, took the life of my children, is to be looking to me to say, well, how will I pay you? That's your problem. That's your debt. That's your burden. So you should get to finding out how you're going to do that. The courts say that I'm owed it, so hurry up with the payment.
It reminds me of a meeting that Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. had with a few civil rights leaders. They were actually talking. One of the things he said was that we were dealt with in a special way in regards to chattel slavery. So in order to repair that, we still have to be dealt with in a special way when it comes to repairing what was done to us and bringing us back to a position of before we were ever made chattels. I think that is one of the best ways to do it, is just to go back into that special way how we were treated. It's like, if you guys chose that we were going to be treated in this special way in a disadvantaged state, then guess what? We also have to be treated in a special way when it comes to bringing us back to the level that which we were originally before we were kidnapped from Africa.
This is why Special Field Orders 15 is so important, because that moment of beauty in our country that a lot of white Americans as well as Black American Negroes talk about is that part when we were not asking, right? In that moment when we were politically established, when we were politically engaged, we had senators, we had governors, we had congressmen who were Negroes that literally 5 years ago just came off of a plantation, that are now running local government, that are now running state government, that are now running the state. So that's a powerful position to have ascended from chattel slavery to being in government, to actually running government, alongside those radical Republicans who risked their lives, not just political parties, but actually put their lives on the line to fight alongside the likes of a Frederick Douglass and many of the abolitionist heroes that we honor and sometimes don't honor because we don't know. Today, the main purpose of us getting back to Special Field Orders 15, because it puts us back in a state where we don't seek redress. When we won that war, we weren't seeking redress. When we became Americans, we weren't asking for reparations. We were going ahead and maneuvering ourselves in a framework of government. And that's the position I believe we need to be put back in. Not to the position prior to the slave ships, because prior to that, we were coming from places so vastly diasporically different. We don't know if whether you were picked up when you arrived in Charleston, South Carolina, from Africa or from South America or from the Caribbeans, but we knew we were Negroes being sold on this auction block today. So it makes sense that in that moment, encapsulating up to 1865, the ones that made it to 1865, the descendants that have ancestors that we're able to carry forth in society today, that either ran away, that either fought back, that either capitulated, that either listened, that we survived. We're here because they survived, no matter how they survived. The fact that we are here today, we need to be put back in the position where before we were not asking for reparations. And Special Field Orders 15 is the encompassing of all of that. A land that we have that's our own, that is not supposed to have anybody but Negroes in it. So you're talking about, we have many Negro towns, Negro cities. We're talking about Negro states. We're talking about Negro governors. We're talking about Negro bodies. We're talking about the Negro legislator. We have to have this so we don't suffer the hands of non-Negroes, whether they be of the 1865 stock of Americans or those who might have immigrated later. We don't need to suffer the discrimination from them, the conscious or unconscious bias from them because of their inabilities to understand what position the American Negro is in America. We need our own states, our own legislators, and our own governments, and we need to have the institutions of Special Field Order 15 reinstituted immediately, which is it's not hard at all. So I think that in Special Field Orders 15, we need our lands back the way the Special Field Order 15 was written, because it is still written in a manner that is able to be enforced today. And many people say, well, where the money come from for that to be done? Well, our money for that was supposed to come from the War Department. It is now called the Department of Defense. And no matter what party you're with, no matter what your political affluences is or political affiliations are, the War Department and the Secretary, the Department of Defense budget is approved every time. Every year is approved. No matter how big it is, how small it is, the defense budget is always approved. So Special Field Orders 15's budgets or financial obligations will fall under the purview of the bill for the defense bill. Therefore, we're not worried about not getting approved, right? So we're already cool in Congress when it comes to funding it. We just haven't had the expeditious mental capacity of our people to push it forward. A lot of us still call it 40 acres and a mule when we should be saying we want Special Field Orders 15.
Roger says, lineage-based reparations should include direct cash payments, not only from the government, but from Wall Street, since they profited and were created from the profit made from slavery. Just to get your guys' comments on what Roger said so far.
Yeah, again, this is what I was saying about how the government is a money sovereign nation. They don't have to be locked in to any type of how much gold do we have. They can print our money tomorrow to start issuing it out, and it can go to our people, and we can start doing it just like we did with COVID, right? They printed this money out of nowhere, just like we're doing for illegal immigrants right now. They're coming up with money left and right. New York just approved a credit card that they're going to use We could have a credit card approved, coming straight from the federal government, just like they have online systems that verify whether accounts is actually sending. We can literally have a portal that we use where we can utilize credit from the federal government via the portal through a two-way authentication system, whether it be your phone or your email, and the authentication system that's on the portal or on the app that literally refreshes every 60 seconds with the new SSL security key. So there's many ways that they can use to go ahead and actually set us up for us to utilize money right now. The thing is, do they have the intent? Do they have the true purpose and heart? And do they have the vision to get it done? Because to be honest, I don't want a whole bunch of non-Negroes making decisions for our reparations. I think the American Negro reparations and the decision making for our people should come from our people and not any other people. Or if it does come from other people, it should be at a 20% to 80%, meaning that there's not so much that their voice should be ignored, but that their voice is not able to sway or deter those who are from the lineage whose ancestors suffered to have to be at a subservient level with them. I don't want to go in a room with a whole bunch of people telling me what I deserve and what I'm going to get for my ancestors' debts. I think that it's only right that we go into a room and tell them what we're going to ask and what we're going to demand, and they're going to give us their input, and we're going to be open ears to it. But we're not going to be at the substantial demand that should they decide in the in that adverse way that we're now suffering again. Because the purpose of reparations is to not have any more suffering. When I pay my restitution or I pay my bills, it's so that I'm not incurring a debt anymore. I'm balancing out the debt with a zero. So I don't want to go into a situation where other people from other nations are making decisions at the behest or for the good for our people, because we've seen through time that other people don't always have the best interest for our people. It is when our people sit down at the table, like they did with General Sherman, Tecumseh Williams, and Secretary of War Stanton, with those 21 religious leaders, to sit back and say, this is what we want for our Negro people going forward, that we then have something that can transcend through the tests of time, like a 40 acres and a mule.
Yeah, I would just concur with what Khalif just said. Really, that was eloquently put. You can't put it better than that. That's for sure.
So just wanted to continue on what Roger was saying. He says, not only must it be lineage based, but also qualification must be that you have chosen Black under race on the census every time it came up.
Just because, again, you fall into the strict scrutiny, because we are going to have to pass the bars, and any discriminatory factors is not going to pass. So it does not matter whether you chose Black or not. To be honest, the only thing that actually matters is that you have the lineage of the bloodline of the people who suffered, and that is superior more than what you would have chosen on the census or on the paperwork. So it does not matter whether they are identifying or Black or not, as much as what needs to matter and what should be precedent over anybody's deciding factor is that they actually are from the lineage and they're from the bloodline. Because we do have some people who do not identify as Black, but that does not negate them from their claim of their ancestors who are of the lineage.
We are definitely not a monolith. I respect the hell out of Brother Khalif. But I would say I agree with Dr. Darity's mind, how he thinks about that and how you should stand on who you are and stand on who you were. And so I do agree with that way. But like we said, there are going to be different ways. We're here with the same thing as long as they are talking about real repair and it's going to lineage based specific people. That's where I would come in and how I would say it.
He says, American freedmen is the ethnicity. That's the delineation that is needed to argue in court. It is written into the congressional record. For the purposes of making a case in court, that is what must be used to argue in court for reparations. He says you are going to make whites and others catch these hands if you start getting them comfortable with saying Negro, bro.
It's just something that you have to recognize, right? When you're talking about the congressional record, Negroes in the Constitution. When you're talking about Negroes, the Freedmen's Bank didn't even survive the test of time, but the Negro Leagues did. I don't think calling the Negroes offensive. I think calling non-Negroes is offensive. Again, The president of the United States recently had said that great Negro pitcher, Satchel Paige, and the president of the Hall of Fame said he would have not had the president use any other word. So it makes absolute sense that we recognize not only who we are, but what terms identified our people. It was only in 1960 that Negro was changed over into this black through the form of black revolutionary. But prior to that, we chose to call ourselves Negroes. Whether you were white, you called us Negro. Whether you were black, you called us Negro. The thing about it is this. The derogatory term for Negro is Nigger. It's the hard ER. It is not Negro. Negro is Negro does not register as offensive. Nigger is. And so understanding that, it is very understood to know that calling me a Negro is not offensive, but calling me a Nigger is. So we can't say that Negro is equal to Nigger. That's not true. See, emotions have to always be put into check, and logic must always supersede emotional. So if I'm going through something and I'm talking to the government, or the government's engaging with me through documents and paperwork, there is a substantial amount of evidence under the Negro identifier for the Negro people, whether you're talking about enslavement and freedom. When you're talking about freedmen paperwork and freedmen documents, you're talking about a paperwork trail that hasn't even stood the test of time through many situations, through many things. Meaning the Freedmen's Bureau ransacked, raided, shut down, abolished. The Freedmen's Bureau avenues. Some places got their stuff microfilmed, some did not. But my great-grandma and my grandma's birth certificate says Negro. My great-grandfather and my grandfather's birth certificate says Negro. It is only me and my mom's that say black. So I have a better chance of going to the government as a descendant of an enslaved Negro in America than I do of going as a descendant of a freedman. Due to the fact that my paperwork I could bring with me to that government will strictly have me linear from enslavement property all the way to me now as Negro. Whereas I go from freedman, I might have a freedman document. I haven't found any freedman documents in my stuff, but I might have a freedman over here. I might have a freedman over there. And so I see somebody else said that it was a Spanish word. Again, in America, the word black denotes black. Spanish is not the language of America. In America, we speak English. So in America, Negro is not the same as the Spanish-speaking Negro. Negro in America is not an adjective. It is a noun, meaning it is not denoting a color. It's denoting a person, place, or thing. So therefore, when you see black, it is not a noun. It's an adjective. It does not denote a people. It is a color. This is very important because the false teachings that we have been taught is to go through and think that when you say Negro, it's equal to saying black. But we just mentioned the 1864 California State Supreme Court case, People versus Hall, that said there's a wide difference between the two. A Negro may be a black person, but not every black person is a Negro. That's still true today in our conversations as we talk about in the term of delineation. When I say I'm delineating under the class of blackness, Obama's an African American president. Obama's a black president. Obama is not a Negro president. Obama is not the descendant of the ancestors who built the White House. This is very important because it is important to know that a Negro may be a black person. Obama is not a Negro, though. So we need to make sure that when we're having these conversations, we're doing so with as much knowledge as possible as to how the dynamic works, but with as little emotion as possible as well.
This goes to what I was when I was saying we're gonna put some water on this because it sounds like we definitely have went through strict scrutiny in our own ways, just being standing on Negro, and this sounds like a Freedman Negro conversation. Whoever's asking these questions, we've heard about them forever, and we have 2024. We have officially gave up the name banging Twitter words. And so we're not trying to, yes, they all denote from Negro. Yes, that's what we believe. And we believe that's the best case to gain true repair through this government is going, stepping towards that, our government, in the name of the ancestors, as they called themselves, as they self-identified. And so that's kind of where we're coming from, but we are not taking away from anybody, and we are not name banging at all. That was like a New Year's resolution. All the Negroes was like, we ain't fighting no more, because the Twitter streets were real. But
Okay.
but yeah, that's kind of where we are at, and that's what it sounds like, is somebody standing on Freeman, which is cool, and that is all part of the Negro. So that's why I was saying, let's put some water on that. It was kind of joking.
And again, if I was to go and tell you, just like right now, if you go and look up the Black's Law Dictionary online, I don't have it directly on me, but Black's Law Dictionary, and I'll just read it to you so our people can know, right? Because a lot of times our folks just don't even know, right? If you look up the term freeman, I'll read it to you right now. It comes up in Roman law: one who was set free from a state of bondage, an emancipated slave. The word is used in the same sense in the United States respecting Negroes who were formerly slaves. I don't think I can get any more clearer than that when I say I am the American Negro. So I can say I'm a Negro, and I don't have to say I'm a. And if you do say you're a freedman and don't say you're a Negro, the eyes of the law sees it as you're a Negro by saying so, because that's how the term defines it.
So I wanted to get to this petition that you all have also for people to take a look at. This is a petition on change.org. It says teamwork wins games, and the hashtag Black American Negro Collective needs 13 more $25 donations for 12 months. This is the change.org. You guys have 1,616 signatures so far, on your way to 2,500. I will share this in the chat as well. What is this petition specifically for?
The petition is specifically for federal reparations to be paid for us. So these signatures, it's got the president is tagged on it, and this change.org is a really awesome way to kind of ring the alarm. And so by signatures, it's getting people's attention across the country, and we're getting support. It's been up since July of 2023 is when I started, and it's really catching momentum. But please, that was just a request, kind of going through the analytics. If 15 people donated $25, and so that was just a suggestion, a teamwork wins games kind of situation. But please support us in any way, sharing it, signing it, sending money to get signatures. Any way it goes, it is bringing attention to this mandatory mission. So that's kind of where the petition's attached to the website that you shared earlier, American Union Reparations.com. That's where the resolution and all that PDFs and all that stuff tied to it, and just really bringing national attention to this American issue.
So when it comes to this discussion of reparations, this is deeply important, especially towards, because, a lot of times we talk about liberation of people like ourselves. We talk about being in solidarity with other groups for their liberation. I think it's also important that other groups who are for liberation also express their solidarity with us when it comes to having a repair that is done, especially those of us who are American descendants of the enslaved, here in this country. Where can they find you, and how can they get in touch with you?
The post, Brother Jermaine Mason, definitely is a good way as well. Going ahead and tapping in through the link. We're going to have more of our stuff that is on a more of an online footprint. I know that we're going to go ahead and start putting some stuff together as far as getting the organization and stuff going online, where we can start really pushing this stuff. We do a lot of partnerships with different organizations as well, like our wonderful brother, New Negro Republic. We actually all talk to each other, and I can go on the View, but to be honest, I think us having a conversation with each other is actually a lot more better, because there's something about Negro unity that I think the viewers need to see. that's actually more beneficial than just hearing a conversation about reparations. When they actually see three Negro men actually knowing what we're talking about, having the concerns for our community, I think that that's something that our community has lacked in a lot of.
For you, Jamin Mason, where can they find you, and what do you have coming up?
Twitter, the handle is that Negro Jammin'. So definitely hit me up on Twitter. Very active on there, pushing reparations out here in Washington State. Slowly coming together. People are seeing that, whoa, this is really happening. This is really a possibility. And I think it's coming around. So please, each one teach one. Thank you for letting us share information today that a lot of people just don't know. They have no idea what we shared today. So putting it out there and doing it with a host that seriously made it comfortable, and I appreciate you letting us talk on here and spill our truth as it should be. So jaminmason@gmail is my email. Please reach out if you want to build. That's what the Negroes are doing. We're doing it intentionally. A lot of people haven't seen the true dedication that we have in what we're doing, but it kind of shows in our work, and we are proud to say that it's working.
Thanks, brothers, for joining. You guys have yourself a beautiful, peaceful, and liberated evening. And I will catch you guys on the next one.